All right, this is the third screencast for Investigation 4B. I'm on page 3, where it says Mississippi River Sediment Transport to the Gulf of Mexico. The Mississippi-Missouri River system with its tributaries is the major drainage basin of the central North American continent. These waters and their load of suspended sediment empty into the Gulf of Mexico. Yet, the annual input of over 300 million metric tons of sediment is not distributed uniformly throughout the year. Spring melting of the winter snowpack in the northern states and mountains means that discharge and sediment transport peak in the spring. Beginning in late spring, through summer and into early autumn, thunderstorms bring locally heavy rains to the drainage basin, but runoff is reduced by water infiltrating the soil and evapotranspiration, meaning runoff is reduced by the fact that the water is seeping into the soil, being absorbed, or being evaporated immediately. All right, we are going to look at Figure 1 in just a second in order to answer the last 6 questions. All right, so real quickly, there is some highlighting that I would like for you to do in the first paragraph. So where it says the Mississippi-Missouri River system with its tributaries is the major drainage basin of the central North American continent, highlight that. And then skip down a couple of lines and find where it says discharge and sediment transport peak in the spring. Meaning discharge means like the volume of water that you're moving and the amount of sediment that's being moved. Those are at a maximum in the springtime. Okay? All right. Looking at Figure 1. So I'm going to put Figure 1 on the screen. And you're going to have to just kind of listen and follow along as we go through these questions. Number 10, according to Figure 1, the mean sediment load of the Mississippi, which is the solid red curve right here, reaches a maximum in which month? January, April, or September? Well, if you look, here's the peak, and there's the high point. And if you drop down, that peaks in April, which should make sense because they said that we have discharge and sediment transport peaking in the springtime. All right, number 11, that month, meaning the month of April, the mean sediment load of the Mississippi has a peak magnitude of about how many metric tons? Well, so all we're doing is we're going over here and we're reading the numerical value for that peak. Well, this faint little line right here marks 500. This line up here marks 600. So the peak is less than halfway up. So it's going to be less than 550, but it's going to be more than 500. And your choices are 500, 530, or 550. So your best answer is going to be 530 metric tons. Number 12, the major contributing factor to this peak in sediment load is likely to be what? Springtime snowmelt, summer thunderstorms, or widespread fall precipitation systems. Well, guys, when is the peak occurring? The peak is occurring in April. So it has to be something that's going on in April, in the spring, because April's in the spring. So it's obviously going to be springtime snowmelt that contributes to the peak in sediment load, which is basically what they told you in the paragraph. Okay, number 13, this peak, the April peak, is or is not evident in all 3 curves shown on the graph. Well, it's obvious in the middle one, that's the average or mean. It's obvious on the 1936 graph, and it's also obvious as a peak on the 1993 graph. All 3 of the lines have a peak in April. So I would circle is. This peak is evident in all 3 curves shown on the graph. All right, number 14. The year 1936, which is your short dash curve down here, marked the height of the Dust Bowl, a widespread and prolonged severe drought in the United States. The year 1993, which is your long dash curve up here, was infamous for severe summer floods in the upper Mississippi and Missouri River basins. These extreme years show that Mississippi River monthly sediment transport values can vary tremendously. August experienced the greatest range, meaning the greatest difference between high and low, with its monthly transport in 1993 being how many times greater than in 1936? Okay, so we're looking at August right through here. Okay. All right, up at the top, 1993 peak looks like maybe, I don't know, 550, 560, something like that. And down here, the 1936 August value looks like, I don't know, maybe 70 or so. Okay, so what are we going to do with those numbers? Well, let me show you. All right, the value from the long dash line, which was 1993, that was 550 or maybe 560, something like that, and divide by the 1936 value for August, which was only 70. And when you do that, you get 7.857, something like that. Okay. If you actually read 560 and divided it by 7, you would get an even 8. Okay. So these extreme years show that the Mississippi River monthly sediment transport values can vary tremendously. August experienced the greatest range with its monthly transport in 1993 being nearly 8 times greater than it was in 1936. Okay. Last but not least is, according to our analysis, weather conditions on the continents do or do not influence the quantity, the amount, of riverborne sediments delivered to the ocean. Well, weather conditions on the continents definitely do influence the amount of sediments that are delivered to the ocean. So you're going to want to circle do. And I would draw yourself another little smiley face by 15, because now you are all done. And just make sure that you've added all the notes, done all the highlighting that I asked you to highlight. Make sure your name's on it and turn it in. Thanks.